This is not what Man City fans wanted to hear just 1 week before the start of the Premier League season, because Pep Guardiola has confirmed that Rodri has suffered an injury setback. He described it as being big, but should we be worried? Is it something to be concerned about? Fingers crossed it isn't the case. Welcome back to the City Ramble. If you can support the channel, please make sure to be hitting the subscribe button. We're looking to grow it as much as possible across this upcoming season. Also, get involved in the City Ramble Discord. I've said it plenty of times on these videos before. It is a great laugh. Basically, a big Man City group chat. We speak about all things City, all things football, all things non-football as well. So make sure if you are in Discord, or if you're not, sign up. Sign up and just join, just because the City Ramble Discord is a great place to be. But yes, Pep Guardiola, speaking ahead of the weekend friendly against Palermo, has come out and said that Rodri at the Club World Cup suffered a big injury setback. Now, anybody who has listened to Pep Guardiola, before, will know that at times how he describes situations can be a little difficult to read behind the lines. It isn't necessarily always clear as to what's going on. So I'm going to read verbatim the quote that Pep Guardiola has said, and I want you guys to sort of make your own mind up, because even I am sort of scratching my head at times trying to figure out exactly what it means. So here we go. Pep Guardiola said, Rodri is getting beggar. I'm begging for him to be okay. Try that again. Rodri is getting better, but had a big injury against Al Hilal. He's trained better in the last few days. Hopefully, after the international break is when he will be really fit. Emphasis on that really fit, because to me, that kind of sounds like he's saying that's when he'll be fully fit, not when he'll be back in the squad. Anyway, I'll continue. Hopefully, in these games, he means the first 3 games of the Premier League season, he can play some minutes. But what is important is that he doesn't have pain. We don't want this Rodri coming back injured. We try desperately to avoid that. He's been training the last 2 sessions with us, and that's good. Rodri isn't involved in the squad that has gone to Palermo for the pre-season friendly against Palermo. He's obviously, he was involved in the open training session in the week. We saw him the first time, really, he'd been pictured in training since pre-season. And yeah, obviously, Guardiola coming out now saying he's had this injury setback. I think what's important to sort of take away from those quotes from Guardiola is the fact he isn't saying Rodri will not be involved in any of City's first 3 matches of the Premier League season. By all accounts, it sounds like he will be fit enough to be named on the bench. What isn't going to be happening, it looks like, is Rodri being named in the starting 11, which, for me anyway, I never felt like he was going to be the starting midfielder in that first game against Wolves, just because of, the way he's been. Did he start 1 game at the Club World Cup? Possibly the Juventus one. I can't remember. But even still, he hasn't. After that knock he took at the Club World Cup, it just felt like the Wolves game would come too soon. Maybe I was looking at the Spurs match or the Brighton game, and we'll pull up the fixture list in a minute and take a look at what could be impacted by Rodri's injury. But it didn't feel like the Wolves one was going to be viable. However, that's kind of been pushed down the line a little bit, isn't it? You'd be super surprised if he does start any of those first 3 Premier League matches because of what Guardiola has come out and said. Before we speak about the fixtures that might be impacted, I want to talk about what Pep Guardiola should and possibly could do to replace Rodri. Now, I feel like Guardiola has to abandon Bernardo Silva and Gundogan playing with each other. Not just in this sort of mini period before Rodri comes back fully fit, but kind of in general this season. And I want to caveat this by saying, anyone who's listened to the channel over the last couple of months will know this position is clear. Throughout the City Ramble, these 2 guys, these 2 unks, and to be fair, I use that phrase every now and again, sort of jokingly, but these 2 guys are City legends. Let's make no mistake. What they have done for this football club is astonishing. But at the same time, you do have to recognise their position within the squad. And while in 2023, when City were winning the treble a couple of years ago, they were at the peak of their powers and working together, they were fantastic. in 2025, heading into the 2025-26 season, is that what City should be doing? Personally, I don't think so. So if we're seeing Ilkay Gundogan and Bernardo Silva line up together in midfield, that's the crucial part, because it might be a case in some matches that Bernardo Silva is playing off the right-hand side and Ilkay Gundogan is in a midfield and maybe Rodri's back in there, or you've got legs around them, and that's fine. But I'm speaking specifically about probably the three players in midfield that you're going to see, especially in that first game against Wolves. I don't think City can be going into it with that. Instead, I feel like Nico Gonzalez has to be the guy that deputises for Rodri when Rodri's not available this season, especially considering the fact that even Kovacic is out injured at the moment. And I don't think he's going to be back until September, or at least that was what was being reported earlier in the summer. It feels like, to me, Guardiola has to rip that band-aid off, because when Nico Gonzalez was playing after he arrived in January, he looked great. In fact, Pep described him as a mini Rodri. And while I'm just hypothesizing here, but it feels like something, around late March or April, Guardiola spotted something that he wasn't necessarily sure. And I don't know whether it was the fact that he wanted to go back to the experienced guys, the guys that had got City across the line in title challenges, to sort of call upon that to get them into the Champions League. Maybe it was just as simple as that. Or if he'd seen something in training that he wasn't certain about. But it definitely did feel like, and I mean the numbers back it up, Nico Gonzalez's minutes went from playing a lot to not really playing at all. Hopefully, fingers crossed, with a bit more training, getting an understanding of Guardiola's plans, philosophy, what that role requires this season, especially in these first three matches, we can see him more, because he's got the legs that maybe Ilkay Gundogan and Bernardo Silva don't. He's got that tempo. He can set tempo. He's on the ball. I feel like he's been good. It's maybe the out of possession stuff that has harmed him a little bit. I don't know. Obviously, it's incredibly difficult joining a club mid-season anyway, like he did in the January transfer window. But also, when you've got Tijani Reinders, who has obviously just joined the club this summer, and we've seen him slot straight in his performances at the Club World Cup, and to be fair, in one of the matches, we did see him start as the holding midfielder. So maybe that's something Guardiola looks to do himself. But I feel like if you can combine Nico Gonzalez with Tijani Reinders, and it might be the case that you add one of the players from Bernardo Silva or Gundogan into that mix, because I think Foden at the same time, he's not travelled to the Palermo match. He's struggling with a little bit of a knock. I'd be surprised if Ryan Cherki's thrown in straight at the deep end right away, and I'm not necessarily sure I would want him to be, because, Ryan Cherki to me feels like a player who might need a couple of weeks, a month or two to get up to speed. But if you had Nico Gonzalez, if you had Tijani Reinders, who in my opinion is ready to go straight away, then maybe it's Gundogan with them. Maybe it's, when he's back fully fit, Kovacic. Maybe it's, I don't know. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. You add someone else in there. Maybe Cherki can play in front of them. I don't know. That to me feels like that would be balance. That's what I want to see in that first game against Wolves. I want to see Nico Gonzalez's athleticism. I want to see Tijani Reinders box to box. Maybe you add Gundogan in there to set the tempo a little bit, or maybe you add Bernardo Silva, who can be a bit of a presser. I don't know, but I really don't want to be seeing tired, leggy midfielders, which at this point in their careers, it feels like when they're playing together, Bernardo Silva and Gundogan almost feel a little bit like. I don't know. It feels like for me that City kind of need to be moving away from this, and they've got the perfect opportunity. Maybe making the best out of a bad situation with Rodri, because whenever Rodri's back fully fit and available, I think everyone, including Guardiola, can admit the guy can't play as much as he did before the injury, because his body clearly gave up on him. And given the fixture congestion that footballers are facing at the moment, they can't sustain that, especially post-ACL. So City can't rely on Rodri as much as they did before his ACL, meaning they need a viable situation and a viable alternative. And if they're flipping around with what we had during times of last season, trying to find a solution, I don't think that's going to be helpful for City in this new campaign. Quickly, before we call it a day, another shout out. If you've enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, all of that lovely business. This is what City's Premier League first 6 matches of the season look like. So we're going all the way until the end of September here. Obviously, After the Brighton game, it is the international break. So Wolves, Tottenham at home, Brighton away. That's City's first 3 of the season. But just have a look after that, immediately after the international break. If Rodri isn't back fit and firing then, no bueno. Because Manchester derby at home, first game back after the international break. Arsenal away. That could be a massive test for City to see where they are so far this season. Within that, I think we're going to have a Champions League game or 2 as well, maybe a League Cup match. So there's going to be plenty of football straight away. And I feel like City, they can't afford a slow start. Whilst I'm not sort of throwing the expectation gauntlet on them and saying that they've got to go and win the first 6 Premier League matches and not concede a goal or whatever, it might be that City only win 1 of their first 3. But at the same time, if we can see a development in terms of performances, in terms of new players coming into the team, in terms of a little bit more energy, a little bit more athleticism, like I mentioned with midfielders, that to me would be fine. Say, for example, City drew 2 matches and won just 1 of their first 3, but we saw that side of their game, then I think that'd be okay, as opposed to a little bit like at the start of last season, if you remember, where City won, I think it was the first 4 or 5 games of the season, but there were some performances in there that you're going, yikes, this doesn't look or feel like City. And it was a bit of a red herring in a way. That's what, if City won the first 6, but they weren't necessarily starting to feel like City again and they were getting a bit of a bounce of a look, maybe you say you take your look and you move on. I don't know. But I would rather City's performances be more promising than the results to begin with. Hopefully we get both. That's the ideal situation. But I'm saying if it has to be one or the other, I think long term, to see that growth, to see that development straight away with the performances, that would be good. But that's what we're looking at for the start of the season. That's what we're looking at in terms of not being available. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that's what we won't be looking at. Instead, more of this, and yeah, hopefully City can have a strong start to season. The performances can be good. The midfield can be balanced. The defence can be energised. The attackers can be getting goals. Hey, it sounds simple on paper, doesn't it? But make sure to subscribe. Make sure to get involved in the Discord. You could come and tell me all my opinions are absolute nonsense if you get involved in that Discord, and I won't say anything about it. Until next time, though, it has been a pleasure. Leave a like, hit the subscribe button, and we will see you later.